Hey, can you close that door, please? Hi, Munchie. You have a hug? 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 Kiss? Thank you. Oh, you smell like tacos. You do smell like tacos. All right, so that seemed to work pretty well once I got the right code in for everybody. Everybody hopped in. Britt had to do it for you? Thanks, Britt. Oh, you don't have audio yet, Trey? Computer audio?
1 second. Can I hear you?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Such a smart.
Thanks for that, Britt. All right.
Y'all lucky, man. Y'all got your girls with y'all, man. Mine ain't with me. You know what I mean?
Is this Wives Tuesday?
You know?
Your brother's fiending.
I got told I'm in one of the boys' room. Usually she's done with work, and I'm on a desktop. She was like, it's either the laptop or your phone. So I got the laptop and came in, and I was sitting in the Zoom waiting room. And then AC was we on Ring Central.
Yep. All right. So remember that we have a 40-minute time limit. That's why I was moving over to Zoom. But we did the first one on Zoom, and the video didn't record well. The Ring Central one was perfect. I got video and audio. The video should be on YouTube later today. The audio will go up tomorrow. I've been playing around with this stuff. The first episode published today. It says on YouTube, not on YouTube, well, it's on YouTube. I'll send you guys the link. Without video, and then the audio podcast is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and some other places. But I just triggered it today, so I haven't been able to find it in the search. So it'll probably show up in the morning. So
I actually listened to it
on YouTube.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Bet. There you go. Did you subscribe?
I subscribe, of course.
Okay. All right. I'll send you guys the link. I listened to it today too. I was super impressed, and I was like, man, I was in this, but don't even remember all of this. So that being said,
bless you.
Thank you. Let's get right into it. I'm gonna go ahead and oh, we're already into it. That's funny. Welcome to episode 3 of the Collective Podcast. I am AC, part of our collective each and every week. Got Trey Hopson, Mike Tillery, Rodney Saucier. Trey is Trey. Mike is Mizzo. Rodney is Rod. I'm AC. So here we go. First and foremost, I hope everyone is one with their health. Is that fair? Everybody healthy?
Yes, sir.
Everyone's healthy.
Avoiding as much as possible. My fiance's godfather was in ICU and all kinds of stuff because of this, but just got released yesterday. So he went through, I believe, 2 weeks of being on death's doorstep and made it out. So that's probably, I know a lot of people are making it out, and then a lot aren't, but just, keep, you guys are all in my prayers. The collective and everybody listening and or watching, definitely in my prayers. So, yeah. So a lot of stuff has happened since last we spoke. They've introduced or announced the 2020 Hall of Fame for the Naismith Hall of Fame, the 2020 inductees. We were pretty sure that certain people would go in, and then we knew for sure that Kobe was going in. That was announced by the Hall right after he passed. But he was joined by is joined by some notable people. So that's important. Like to talk about that a bit, talk about certain people's comments about who's had better careers, things like that. And then we can just continue to go wherever we wind up going. We always find some great topics. But I'll just send it around the horn really quickly so that everybody can just give us pertinent information about themselves, and then we can jump into the Hall of Fame. So first up, go ahead, Trey.
Trey, happy to be doing this podcast, man. It gives me time to think and reflect about all the good sports stuff that I'm into, and I like to talk about. Big sports guy. AC and I go back many different events and things like that, with sports, and and here we are older, and now we're sitting talking about it, which is kind of great. Yeah, man, been around for a while. Big basketball, boxing, football fan. Just anything that has to do with sports, man. I'm real interested in it, and I'm not a writer or anything like that, but I do keep up with sports. Big sports guy.
Cool. Mizzo.
Michael Tillery, 15 years in the game, maybe closer to 20. I don't even really know. Just try to be. I'm trying to be the guy that writes the stories that needs to be written, specifically from a Black point of view, so history remains sane. I've written for various magazines, the New York Times, came prominent through Slam magazine. Had my own site, Starting Five, where I was introduced to AC, Sin Q. He was also my editor when I covered the 2008 finals or 7 finals in Boston.
Yeah.
Some football. Covered the Eagles, Sixers, Phillies. I was the first blog to be credentialed in both football and the NBA, and that's a credit to AC for getting me in the door. I had a podcast for the last 4 years with Chuck the Public Enemy site, rapstation.com. I just really try to put a different perspective out there. So again, history remains sane.
What's up? Rod.
What's up? It's Rod. Long-time basketball fan, football fan, track and field, boxing, baseball, itching, dying for anything sports right now, since we're seeing a bunch of replayed games, mostly from this year, which I don't like. I wish they would go deeper on ESPN and show us something that we thought were classics from back in the day, and kind of mix it up, give us a little balance. But I guess they're trying to keep in mind everyone's perception of the players that are getting ready to get drafted or coming out to the NFL and NBA. So I get that part. But like I said, just starving for sports, not used to not being on a field or basketball floor for this long, this many consecutive days. I'm sure, AC, you feel the same way. At some point, we would have on some kind of court shoes or cleats or something, running, chasing someone, or talking crazy and quieting somebody up. So this is a lot to deal with. But on the flip side, I'm enjoying the family The kids are getting their schoolwork done during the day. They actually like being homeschooled, which is scaring me because I'm ready for them to go back. But it's cool. We getting a lot of time and everybody's healthy.
Yeah. So it's interesting, AC. It's interesting that Rod, you talk about being away from the field, being away from the court / being away from the field. It is really interesting. It is different. I've gone out twice to go run, and I don't know if all of you guys know, but some of you know that I love to run, and so that's been outside of not being able to officiate. I think that not being able to run has been the most difficult thing for me. Not being able to run consistently. So I did go out twice to go run 5-6 miles, and I felt like it wasn't so risky, but I had mixed feelings about going out, and so I've started to run inside of my house. And actually, on Sunday, was it Sunday? Today's Tuesday, right? Recorded Tuesday, but you guys are hearing this on Wednesday. Sunday, I ran 10 miles in my house. I don't know if you guys know what that's like, but that's a lot of laps.
And probably will never know.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I would never know that.
A lot of rounds.
You did the soap on the kitchen floor, holding on to the.
That's funny. No, man, I started at the door leading from the garage into my house and ran through the living room, up the stairs, down the hallway, down to my stepdaughter's door, and then back down to the door where I started. And ultimately, it wound up being 20,000 steps. And I think ultimately I wound up going on that round trip 200 times.
Good Lord.
Yeah, it was. And I'd done 5 miles a couple times, but I really wanted to get to 10 that day. And so it's interesting. And then today, like once we wrap up here, I'll be running 6, which will be 12,000 steps. So it's something like to keep me sane. I've also been on my Peloton every day for the last 17 days. Like that's been cool, but there's no substitute for the fresh air. I have a really nice trail right up the street. Can't really touch it. And now it's raining, so even if I wanted to go out, it's like I want to battle coronavirus and the rain while I go run in the dark. Nah, that's okay. I'll pass.
Is the ladder different inside?
Yes, it's more intense. It's more intense for sure. So Rod, going back to what you said, I was listening back to episode 1, and I realized that you said in the beginning that you don't mess with UFC at all. And then I said at the end of episode 1, like that's been my thing. Like not historically, but during these times, I watched so many of these UFC fights, and I became a fan. So I implore you, I know you're not a fan, we all know, go back and watch some of those replays on ESPN Plus because it's new to you. Like it's something you haven't seen before, and there's a lot of good stuff there. It's not all good.
I've tried, man, but it's brutal. I've tried
during coronavirus.
That's brutal.
You haven't tried during quarantine. By the way, I say quarantine, and it takes me to a post that Brianna showed me recently where someone was saying what they were doing during quarantine, and they spelled it KORN space TEEN.
Oh my God.
Quarantine. 2 words. They were under quarantine.
Lord help us.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey. Anyway, glad to be back, everybody. Mizzo talked about the sports writing aspect. I think I've been a writer for about 25 years. I met Mizzo through sports writing, grew up with Trey, met Rod in officiating. So these are 3 people who are very important to me and have been important since I met them. And these are 3 people that I call friends. And I'm glad that I was able to bring them together here as a collective, pun intended. Therefore, here we are with the collective. That being said, the 2020 Naismith Hall of Fame class was recently announced. I don't have it in front of me. Oh, what'd you say?
Real quick.
Okay.
We're talking about what we've been doing on this downtime. Talking about stuff that's brutal. I don't know if it's brutal for y'all, but this is brutal for me, and I did it.
Okay.
So ESPN now is putting on 2K tournaments with,
Oh my God!
Right.
with
Yeah.
the NBA players, man.
Right.
You've been watching, huh?
I watched 2 of those games, and I was like, man, I think I'm about to go in the backyard and watch grass grow. This is brutal, man.
Yeah. So
It's genius. It's genius for this generation. You know, this generation is reimagining sports anyway because they're so video game oriented.
Right.
I turned it on just to see.
I know. I saw.
Go ahead.
Patrick Beverley was playing. Man, who was he playing? I think he was playing like Hassan Whitehead or something like that, and blew him out. And they weren't even really talking. They had the headphones on, and you would just hear one of them say like, "Oh yeah, got him." And that was like all the whole monologue. I could see if they were sitting having a conversation like us and talking about stuff and playing. Silence.
Yeah.
It was just a little awkward.
I think I might want to have an online Halo tournament because I talk. But yeah, I watched a little bit, Trey, of like I did. It was day one. It was the first game. I don't remember who that was, but I just turned it on to see the format. And yeah, they weren't talking. And then I heard somebody commentating, and I'm like, "Are they?" And I was like, "Oh no, that's part of the video. That's part of 2K."
Right.
So I was like, "Okay, this is boring."
But yeah, I just had to throw that in, man. We can go on and get back.
Yeah. All right. So 2020 class of the Naismith Hall of Fame: Kobe Bryant, Kevin Garnett. Who am I missing? Oh, Tim Duncan, Eddie Sutton, Rudy Tomjanovich, Tamika Catchings, Kim Mulkey, who was also Kim Mulkey Robertson at one point, but Kim Mulkey, Barbara Stevens, and Patrick Baumann. I said Catch, right? I said Tamika Catchings?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, so we got NBA players, WNBA players, coaches. We got one who was a phenomenal coach and a phenomenal player, who is a phenomenal coach and was a pretty good player, Kim Mulkey. I hear that Rudy Tomjanovich did all right on the court, so another former player that's a coach. But yeah, so this one hits a little differently because we all knew our guy would get there, Kobe, but he's passed. He's passed on, so he's in there posthumously. 2020 Hall of Fame class. React.
I think it's a great class. I think it's apropos that they put Kobe in this year to go along in with his peers, true peers. That's going to highlight this class forever. It's going to bring along a new generation of fans to the Hall of Fame. I hope that they have someone speak on his behalf at the Hall of Fame, and I truly hope it's his father. It has to be his father. We all saw, the memorial where they just kept panning to the family, and it was very awkward, that they didn't have his father speak. And I think I alluded to that in the first time we spoke, that I thought that Doc should have been there, being that he's Kobe's basketball grandfather, and that would have been symmetric with his father, at least saying a couple words. But, Kobe Bryant, to me, in my opinion, there's a difference between the legacy of Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan. I say so because despite having Kobe having arguably the best coach of all time, and when Popovich is done, he'll be right there as well. He did it with so many different parts. And obviously, he had the benefit of another all-time player in Shaquille O'Neal, who was the most dominant player of his time. That I don't like when they say Shaq is the most dominant player ever, because Wilt's probably trying to grab everybody from heaven when they say that. But Kobe was a special player. I think that his legacy is tarnished because of those two Nash MVPs. It's the reason why I was so hardcore against it. Now, I've had personal interactions with Nash that weren't cool, So maybe I'm a little bit biased in that, but I just remember Bill Walton saying to the Steve Nash was the MVP with the most unorthodox numbers ever for an MVP. I think he's the only two-time winner in any sport that hasn't gone to the finals. You didn't see John Stockton being a perennial MVP candidate. Chauncy Billups. And the difference between those two players and Steve Nash is they play defense. So I do think that giving Nash the MVP was a popular vote. And this is the reason why I have so much of an indifference to my media peers, because I think they just did it because Steve Nash was white, to be perfectly honest. They forget about that he had Stat on that team. And people don't remember how Stat was averaging 40 points in that one playoff series. They also opened the lane. So Nash was able to basically get to the dots and throw oops to Stat all game. He was picked off of his defender for a big man. So a lot of his buckets was at the cup. There's a reason why D'Antoni hasn't won a championship, despite the array of talent that he has had over his career. It's a lack of defense. Steve Nash was a great athlete. So when people say that, he wasn't athletic enough, that's bull crap. Steve Nash is a great athlete, obviously, because he probably could have played soccer in the Premier League.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how good he was, And, I think that is part of the reason why I need for sports writers to properly award players who are deserving of the MVP. We can go back all the way to Will Chamberlain. The fact that he was 50 and 25 and didn't win it. Bill Russell won at 17 and 27. Most people say that Wilt could have been MVP almost every year of his career. The MVP fatigue is something that I think that has hurt LeBron James. It'll stain his legacy a little bit. Those awards matter when you speak of them after players are done. And when they don't win, it opens the door for criticism. And what Kobe averaged 37 points that year? 34 points? He averaged 40 points for the whole month. It was ridiculous. And the next year they could have given it to Shaq or LeBron James or Kobe. So there was one game where there was an all-time dunk on Nash from Kobe, and I think it had a lot to do with that. And then to have him as a teammate and see that this dude has 2 MVPs, Steve Nash was never, ever more viable to his team than Kobe Bryant. I don't care who says it. I don't care what reason they say. There is no way possible that a player as gifted offensively and defensively did not win as many MVP awards as Kobe Bryant. There was a time where Steve Nash had more MVP awards than, I think it was Jason. They put the numbers up. It was Jason Kidd, Shaq, Gary Payton, Kobe, and many other players. You know, that is a ridiculous thing. It is truly a ridiculous thing. And it hurts me as not just a reporter, but a sports writer to see history become a lie and transform into common criticism later on in life when certain players are named as opposed to the ones who won. You know, Kevin Garnett was obviously a great two-way player. I think he was underrated offensively. You know, he put more passion into the game on a defensive end. You know, as we talked before we got on, it was a unique thing to hear him covering games, articulate the interior and perimeter pick and rolls. That was something I never and see for, you know, covering the NBA. You know, his legacy was an incredible one. I wish he had gone to Michigan, me being that Michigan man, you know. And I am grateful to have covered him, to have looked in his eyes. You know, certain players have certain eyes. Kevin Durant has great white shark eyes. Carson Wentz has eagle eyes. You know, I call Kevin Garnett Black Pharaoh because he had that leadership look in his face that was just all time to me. Besides the Detroit Pistons, I think that the Boston Celtics have had the greatest locker room that I've walked into. You know, there's this misnomer that it was KG's team. It was Ray Allen's team. Ray Allen walked around with these 2-3 size too big, you know, shower shoes, you know, and he walked in there like he walked through the locker room like he was the Fonz, you know, and it was a lot of people like to think that the hierarchy was KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen. It's inverted with Paul Pierce being in the middle. You know, for him to go to Boston and get out of purgatory in Minnesota, cemented his legacy. You know, I think that KG gets a lot of undue criticism because of how he approached speaking and playing his peers. You know, he was an old school player, you know, gifted at 7 foot, could dunk with the best of athletes of time, and defensively and offensively was just as gifted. Tim Duncan was an incredible player. He was a robot. He was Greg Popovich's mind on the floor. You know, we all played sports. Some of us probably coached. I've coached. You know that you can go to a player and not even be worried about them because most of the time they were going to come through in the clutch. And that was Tim Duncan. I don't have a good relationship with Tim Duncan. You know, I just remember him shoving me out the way basically when I was doing a piece and I was asking for different players at different positions to define the position. And he basically pushed me to the side for the white boys in the room that he didn't even know. I hate dudes like that. They get cut off from me. I'm not going to sit here and give Tim Duncan extra credit that I would allow other players that hasn't been heard by my ilk because of his disrespect for black sports writers. It's something that is evident in a lot of players. And I don't know why it's there. I truly don't know why it's there. I'll cover anybody as long as they are good people I will write about them the best of my ability for time. I will give Tim Duncan credit for the greatness of his career, but I would take Charles Barkley over him. I would take Chris Webber over him pre-injury. I would take Rasheed Wallace and Kevin Garnett over him if plugged into that same position that he was in. You know, I don't know how he would have performed in an other atmosphere, regardless of his talent. You know, 1998, obviously after the lockout, you know, when him and David Robinson defeated the Knicks, I watched it from a club in Newark, Delaware. And I wanted Patrick to win so bad like everyone else. But that rookie greatness came out of Tim Duncan. I obviously was a fan of his since Wake Forest. You know, I was a big fan of him. But, you know, when I approached him in the locker room a few times and he gave me some rec, you know, he was kind of crossed off the list for me. Parker, wait, the best in our locker room was Manu Ginobili. He was great. He was cool. He was always calm to the media. Obviously, he's a little bit more cultured, I guess, because he spent more time overseas than all of them, you know. But I'm not a Tim Duncan dude. I wish him well. I congratulate him on his induction into the Hall of Fame. But I'm a doubter.
I was so funny you said that. I was to just kind of piggyback on what you said. I've always thought if Tim Duncan on another team, would he be able to play in the way that he played? Or was he just in that system that Pop had? You know what I mean? That but also to go back on what you were saying about Steve Nash, I'm going to tell you why. I know you guys know I did choreography for a while, and I actually did choreography for 2 years for the Phoenix Suns girls and for their cheerleaders. And so I was out there a lot back when they had that super team, 7 seconds or less. Mm-hmm. And the reason Steve Nash won those MVPs, I think, is because they were the exciting team like the Golden State Warriors were when winning championships. Now, Steve Nash, great player. I respected him so much because he had great work ethic and he played in pain all the time. He didn't let people know. His back was bothering him all the time, but he fought through it. But the thing is, he made so many players around him better to where people thought they were great players playing in this system that they were playing in that 7 seconds or less, because just think about it. Joe Johnson signed that huge contract when he was in Phoenix. Changed teams. He wasn't as good as people thought he was. Sean Marion is just a true athlete. Stoudemire didn't do as well as people thought he was going to do. He even saved careers like Raja Bell. But just playing in that system, everybody was exciting. And I think that's since all that hype was on that team, and they had 4 All-Stars in one year. They had 4 All-Stars. Then I forgot who won the 3-point contest. Somebody was in that. Steve Nash won the skills contest, and it was just everything Phoenix Suns. And, you know, it's the votes that get you in, you know what I mean? And
he was defensive liability, though, man. You know what I'm saying? And they didn't win a championship. You know, that's huge to me. That's huge to me. Like, why not give it to Chauncy Billups or even Chris Paul, who basically did the same things that he did and played defense? You know what I mean? That this can't be understated. And it needs to be spoken every time Steve Nash's name is brought up. And not in a bitter sense, but in the totality of analyzing the game of basketball and how defense does matter when you want to win a championship. That's just my point. You know what I mean? I don't want to belabor it. You know, I don't want to, beat a dead horse, because I've beaten that dead horse and it's become glue so many times that, people around me don't even bring up his name, but it's a trigger warning for them. You know, but it's just an incredible misnomer to speak Steve Nash's name. Like, a lot of people are trying to put him in the top 10 point guards of all time. It's ridiculous. It's crazy.
And again, like I said, I was just saying, piggybacking on why they gave it to him, and I believe just because so much hype was around that team. But anytime there's a Kobe Bryant, LeBron James, stuff like that on the court, there is no Steve Nash MVP ever.
It's not.
Ever. So,
especially with the stats, you know what I mean? Especially with the stats. That's what it like. If Steve Nash averaged 25 points and 12 assists, like Chris Paul did a couple times, give it to him. Give it to him if you want to. Just look at that 3-year period. We had Steve Nash win, and then they gave it to Dirk the next year, and Dirk puts out the first round by Baron Davis in Golden State. He got dunked on so viciously. It was embarrassing for the world.
Right.
You got to play defense. You got to play defense. The reporters have to analyze the game from a defensive standpoint that is not speaking of these old dudes on the couch, on their porch. I'm not talking like that. I'm talking about how defense does matter, because in every game, Steve Nash got 8 up offensively by his opposition, whether they were an all-star or not. And for that to fall out of the narrative, and Colorado aside, there's a lot of people like to say, they didn't give it to Kobe because of his issues in Colorado.
But
I'll take that. Listen, I'll take that. But if you're comparing two players and you say Kobe Bryant and Steve Nash, if you don't pick Kobe Bryant over Steve Nash, you are a fool. 100,000 times, 120 million times.
Right.
You pick Kobe Bryant, man, and I think that it's staying at Kobe's line. It's hurt him a little bit. It's really hurt him when talking about history, because he has one MVP, a 9-time All-NBA defender, a 9-time first team, right? 9-time All-NBA defender, 9 times, and you want to talk about some dude. And I mean, it's just ridiculous to me. I'm passionate about it. I'm going to continue to be passionate about it to where I'm debating my grandkids' peers. I'm going to be a crazy old dude that's talking about this on the documentaries.
Right.
And the same passion I'm talking about it right now. But yeah, man, I'm sorry.
Said D'Antoni. I'll probably go on record and say I don't think a D'Antoni team will ever win a championship.
Of course not.
Because they don't play defense. They'll come in and they'll beat you one game. They'll beat you one game, get in, get out. But when you lock it down in a series, they're not going to win.
Their only shot was when Chris Paul got hurt. I think that was the best shot he will ever have.
Yes. When he pulled it.
It's very unfortunate because I wanted Chris Paul to get one. He was my first magazine piece in Slam Magazine. It was the first time I've been published. It was just a great thing for me. And then when you look at post Steve Nash and look at Chris Paul's numbers and how he almost emulated Steve Nash in the lane and took it to another level with Tyson Chandler with the alley-oop, it totally dismisses Steve Nash. But my media peers, because they're all about writing to popularity, fail to even consider Chris Paul for the award after doing exactly what Steve Nash did, and he also did it on the defensive end. He took it to another level with his offense. He was clutch. You know, he was a bulldog. Always still a bulldog. You know, also played with pain. You know, also did it with made his teammates better. You know, don't even get me started on Chauncey Billups. Don't get me started on Chauncey Billups.
Yeah, I don't want to get you
You know?
started. I don't want to talk about 2004. Don't do that unless you want to talk about baseball. All right, let's end. All right, yeah, back to the back in the second segment. So Mizzo was closing out about Chris Paul making people better, and then he was going to go into Chauncey, but we know about Chauncey. Definitely know about Chauncey in 2004. We don't need to belabor that point. Yeah, and to that point though, Chris Paul still making his teammates better. I don't think that has stopped. Did you want to add anything to this topic, Rod?
Definitely. I'm with Mezzo, man. I hope that his dad, Kobe's dad, gets a chance to speak at his Hall of Fame induction, man. Because I know I got a chance to really talk to his dad here and there some years ago, and I know how close knit they used to be, and it's crazy that you couldn't look at the funeral and tell that. And people say, well, you know, why wouldn't his wife, you know, let them do it? Those are his parents. But one dynamic I think people forget is a man goes home from work, lays next to his wife at night, they talk. She may have heard stories that, of course, we're not privy to. And she probably heard a tone in his voice that made her feel like I shouldn't do this. I mean, because we all talk to our significant others about things we go through with our moms, dads, siblings. And they may say, well, hey, Rodney's cool with this brother, but he can't stand the other one. Or Rod's cool with his sisters, but he can't stand his brothers. Or Rod and his dad are close, but he and his mom, you know, they're like oil and water. They can't be in the same room. So our spouses pick up on this type of stuff. And I kind of guess, just my personal opinion, that may have had something to do with why he didn't have them to speak.
I don't even think it was up to her.
Why he didn't have them to speak.
Yeah, I don't even think it was up to her.
And that probably played a part too. I'm just speculating.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought people were kind of coming down kind of hard on her for a while.
No, I would never do that.
As far as Kobe, and I've seen him on screen, and I've seen him from 5 or 6 feet away actually playing on the floor. And I've told everybody who says that I'm crazy out of my mind, but you know me, AC, when I watch players, I break down every little piece of their game, whether they can, you know, dribble with their offhand, whether they can shoot with their offhand, whether they take 2 dribbles and pick it up, what their tendencies are. I'm like a human scouting report every time I watch basketball. And it helps me with officiating, because sometimes I look at players and I said, you know what? He's lightning fast going towards his right side, but on his left side, he struggles. He kind of gallops with the ball, or whatever the case. And it helps me, because then I can say, well, is this defender fast enough to get there in front of he or her? And to the right side, probably not. To the left side, probably so. So I pick up on those little things. And just watching Kobe from the time he was, I guess we all started kind of watching him at 16, 17 years old until he retired. I've never seen anybody, bar none, with the skill level of Kobe. Never. When you add the fact that he can shoot over his left shoulder, over his right shoulder, he can finish left, he can finish right, he can dunk left, dunk right, which it sounds simple. But I asked a guy one time to show me a video of Michael Jordan dunking with his left hand. And he said, oh, man, I couldn't pull it up. I said, of course. He didn't dunk with his left hand. Pippen did. But you would rarely find, unless Mike is like right under the basket, really didn't dunk with his left hand. But unlimited three-point range, dribbling ability, not just north and south like LeBron, but laterally. I mean, the dude had dribble moves. He had dribble pull-ups. He can shoot off the catch, which is why people say, oh, man, you're a LeBron hater. And I'm like, well, that's because I don't hate LeBron, but I watch Kobe do all these things that LeBron can't do. And so it works for LeBron because we're in a different era and everybody runs a spread offense. So you can't really trap and corner LeBron like you could in Kobe's heyday. You don't really see half court traps and full court pressure. I mean, like when Muggsy Bogues was guarding you from the inbounds pass all the way to the other end of the floor until you guys took a shot, and then he's like pestering you again the whole game. You don't see any defenders like that. The league is pretty much like robots now, where everybody is running the same spread offense that D'Antoni was running back then for Steve Nash, which brought me to the Steve Nash point. Steve Nash was in a spread offense before it was popular. So now everybody runs a spread offense, the whole league. And when you think about the fact that some of his best years were 18 and 10 in a spread offense, that's pretty pedestrian. When you look at what players are doing now in the same type of systems, where, Trae Young is like, 25 and 9? And this is only his second season.
Trae Young is
James Harden is like 35, 9 and 8 or something like that. So it really doesn't matter who you play at the point position in that offense because it's all screen and roll and shooters on the wings, and you got to pick your poison. Am I going to help and try to cut this guy off, leaving him to kick out for a three, which is what the league wants to do now anyway, or should I just try to mix it up and help sometimes, but then not help sometimes and see if we can do the best we can, like what they do on LeBron or James Harden, or should, we try to just show hard on that pick and roll and try to make them, go the right way with the pass. I mean, it's options. And to me, because kids play so much travel ball and grow up in that same system from the time they're like 8 years old to the NBA, it's like, to me, they play like robots. Like everyone plays the same. You don't get a chance to see a guard like Mike go against a guard like Reggie Miller one night, and then a guard like Nick Anderson the next night, and then a guard like Ricky Pierce the next night. Like everyone's doing the same thing now.
I think the best should guard the best.
Yeah. Right. And they don't guard each other the whole game. I think I said that on the first one. Yeah. So, you can have your best player shooting over some scrub because the rotation went that way. Mm-hmm. But I think Steve Nash got the MVPs around the time. I think Kobe's Colorado case hurt him. It definitely hurt him because they had protesters, females picketing stadiums everywhere the Lakers went at the time it happened and after. And I think it was a bad look for the league, in their opinion. Case dismissed or not, they don't like any negative press, especially when it comes to something like that, or domestic violence, which were
That or
hot
do
button
some,
issues
that
at
or
the
do
time.
some
So
dog.
yeah, so and that was another time where David Stern and the NBA was trying to move more globally and trying to grow the game. So there was a big emphasis on trying to make sure that the international players did well and featured them. So they started to feature Ginobili a lot more. They started featuring Nash a lot more, a lot more to that international appeal. And it took off because basketball, it achieved its objective. It grew all over the world. At the same time, as far as what we were used to, it took a step back. And Steve Nash numbers really are pretty much what you were getting from John Stockton and before him, Mark Price. If anybody remembered Mark Price in Cleveland, Mark Price had been running those numbers for years.
Yes, sir. 40 and 20 at times.
And he had never been considered a MVP candidate because you had other players who, like Isaiah Thomas, like Magic Johnson, who were getting 19 and 12 every game without being in a system like that. So, it's a slap in the face that Kobe only has one MVP. But with that being said, I think another thing that people don't realize is more emphasis has now been put on the playoff MVP than the MVP. I mean, if you look at the MVPs after I don't know. I guess after Karl Malone, didn't Karl Malone won what, 97, somewhere around there?
Yeah, him and Barkley got one from Mike.
And it came.
He got two from Mike.
Yeah, and it became like a popularity contest. Like, who do we want to have it this year? And when they were trying to grow the game, like I said, globally, it became like an international award. Nash won twice, and not saying that Dirk couldn't play, because Dirk could straight up ball. But Dirk had other seasons where he killed people and didn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
And then with LeBron starting to come up through the ranks around that time, it was like, oh, we got an heir apparent right here. I mean, they started calling LeBron great before Kobe even won the MVP. They were already kind of saying, oh, he's the face of the league. Well, you forget this dude is sitting over here scoring 32 a night for the season and doing things historically in the NBA that has never been seen, and you already crowning this guy? Like, don't get me wrong, he was really good at a really young age, but Kobe was doing it until he tore his Achilles. That's a long time.
Yeah.
I think you get to about 50, 60 players before you even mention Steve Nash. At least.
Right.
That's really,
or maybe 100.
That's really the point. That's really the point.
And
maybe 100.
I mean, Steve
Nash had
the players. Like, sometimes we look at teams and we say, oh, they don't have any superstars. But sometimes it's better that they have the players who really perfectly fit their system. Steve Nash had the team with players who really fit what they wanted to do. Raja Bell was 3-and-D. That's what they needed. They didn't want him trying to come off of pin downs and curl plays. That wasn't his game, and that's not what they needed. Stoudemire was a live guy, kind of limited offensively. His offense didn't really grow until he got out of Phoenix. But by that time, they didn't really need him to shoot 25 times a night when he got to New York. But in Phoenix, his job was, hey, weak side defender, go block a shot from the weak side, and catch this lob when Steve Nash throws it to you. And a lot of times you saw Steve Nash would get to the hole, and he wouldn't take a shot. He would he would continue to dribble through and set Stoudemire up because Steve Nash wasn't fast. He had a little quickness. I mean, they let him get away with a few things on screens. I remember Phil Jackson used to complain how much Steve Nash could hold the ball around the screen and carry it.
Yep.
Which definitely gave him a huge advantage. But that's not to say that other players didn't get away with stuff because they did. But when Steve Nash was in Dallas, he could remember standing in a bar in a happy hour in D.C. and I'm watching Dallas play, and that's when Van Exel had got traded from the Lakers to Dallas, and Steve Nash didn't see the floor the last 5 or 6 minutes of every fourth quarter in the playoffs. Like that was Van Exel time. They needed him.
Point.
Yeah, I mean he was a liability. He couldn't guard anybody. He couldn't get a shot off. They needed Van Exel's offense and defense to just stay afloat. And so, I'm with Mizzo, man. When I see some of this stuff, it kind of gets to me because I used before Kobe passed away, everyone always hollered, oh, the Lakers can't get free agents because no one wants to play with Kobe. And then it's like once he retired, you got all these guys who run to Kobe. Obviously, they had a relationship with him. I mean, like, they didn't just have a relationship with him once he retired. They had been friends with this guy for a long time. The Lakers would just catch that, but that's another story. But this guy's what he gave back to the league is in a short time is unmatched. And it's kind of like he wanted the whole league to do well. I mean, he was working with everyone from Jason Tatum to Kyrie Irving to half the Clippers teams. And I heard that I mean, there was a knock against this dude because I guess because he was an introvert and he didn't hang out with people, I'm guessing. But there was a knock against this dude with every single thing he did. And I was telling my wife, that's probably the reason why I like him more than anybody is because he just really didn't give a damn. Mm-hmm. He heard everyone hollering Kobe shoots too much, and he never stopped.
Never stopped.
He never stopped. And he's like, why am I going to stop shooting if we're winning? Which I completely agree with. Why stop a good thing? If that's what you're supposed to do, that's what you do. So I argue with some people who say, oh, Rod, man, he shot too much. He was a ball hog. And I'm like, well, was he going to pass it to Chris Mill or Rod Bondwick? or who else? I mean, like, think of if this dude actually ever had a shooter on his team. He didn't have a shooter since Glenn Rice and Brian Shaw left.
Right.
He worked with what he had and with no complaints.
Yeah, buddy.
And I hear all these guys, oh man, they got to get me some help. LeBron's team is not good enough. That's why he keeps losing. I'd never heard Kobe complain about what he had to work with.
Right.
Now, I did hear him complain once Jerry Buss said, hey, we're not going to rebuild. And then they started rebuilding and gave him, he had, I mean, imagine this dude had Smush Parker, Chris Mim, Kwame Brown, and Luke Walton on the same floor and still went to the playoffs. Mm-hmm. That's a D-League team.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a D-League team. If D-League. But still went to the playoffs and still almost and I get to thinking that if he had not tried to make that point and started shooting the ball in that second half and they beat Phoenix, Jerry West would have never made that trade to go get Pau Gasol because he would have said, hey, We don't need to make a trade. He can win with what he got.
Yeah.
So to me, that was brilliant.
Right.
Yeah.
But
buddy of mine. Oh,
go ahead. Oh, but I was just gonna say with Duncan, and it's a trip because Mizzo, I've been watching documentaries about stars slighting black writers. I've watched one on HBO. I've watched one, I can't remember the names of them, but I've seen like 3 of them. And they were showing there's the red carpet for shows and how they will completely skip the black writers and the black bloggers, and they will go straight to, you know, the people from the white magazine who they don't know. And I guess I didn't realize it over the years until I saw it, and these documentaries focused on it to see how, you know, basically they write our narratives and they kind of dictate all the information we get. And it's slanted because that's going to be slanted in the favor of who they like and who they don't like. And those people are going to blow up, the ones that they like. And the ones who they don't like are, you know, they just go to the wayside. And the writers, they're just never going to get a good look from bigger publications. You know, we're never going to see what some of these black writers can do because they're not getting a shot. They're not getting the interviews from some of these people who could actually make them. You know, like Amar'e, he blew up with Michael Jordan. And he wasn't a sports writer by profession, but he blew up because Jordan he would only give interviews to Amar'e at some point. So I just see how big that is. And, you know, kind of sad that Tim Duncan and Tony Parker would act like that. Especially because of the fact that they too weren't born in the States and should be a little more cultured and seasoned than that with Ginobili, but you know, I don't know.
Let me so I'm gonna tell a story, AC, that you were fully aware of with the Eagles, with me.
Yeah.
So, and I'm gonna tell it as honestly as I can. Right? And this is pulling on Superman's cape a little bit regarding the NFL. So AC credentials me for Eagles Dallas.
I'm still listening, by the way. I just have to go off camera real quick.
It was a game that was pivotal for both Dallas and Eagles. I think they played 3 times in 5 weeks. I may be a little bit wrong about that. But so AC credentialed me for a game, for a Dallas game. It was a raucous affair at Lincoln Financial Field. It was the last moments of Donovan McNabb in Philly. The new guard was coming in, the Kevin Cobbs, the Sean Jackson, the Jeremy Macklins. The defense was still good, but they had, at that time, got rid of Jeremiah Trotter and a couple other 30-year-olds because that's what the Eagles did at the time. And Donovan McNabb ran for 2 first-down conversions that Andy Reid challenged and was unsuccessful. Us from the press box saw exactly where the spot was that Donovan had to get to. And it was tense in the press box because it was a clutch moment. It was money time. Donovan got both of them. It was, I think one of them was at the wing at half field, midfield. and the other one was on the sideline. When the calls were overturned, there was a hush in the press box. Subsequently, and you guys know how I like to talk about bonus ball, right? How those bonus possessions become victories. Eagles lost because they did not get those first. Andy Reid was livid on the sideline. He just couldn't believe it. So we go down to the locker room. In this game, Deshaun Jackson didn't even pass in the end zone because Terrence Newman was going to light him up. As soon as he caught, he was going to light him up. After the game, and I'm prone to do this regardless of sport, I talk to some of these guys. You know, I start a relationship with them, you know, especially in my city because I know how the media is here. And I was talking to Deshaun, and he gave me the Tim Duncan treatment. You know, same thing.
He knows.
I remember when Andy Reid, after that game, pulled him in the tunnel and probably spoke about that incident in the end zone. I know there had to be some discussion between him and Donovan, you know. So before I get to that, Allen Iverson comes back with the Denver Nuggets. Classic game. He goes off, kisses the floor. Halftime, I am talking to Donovan. And Deshaun Jackson is coming towards us. And instead of going around us, he walked right in between us. Donovan looked at me and said, I got the picture of our conversation. Said somebody talked. I had just talked to the executioner as well. And, you know, him and Donovan didn't get along. But Donovan looks at me and said, you know, you see what I got to deal with? You know? So going back to the locker room, there was a reporter who, even after what we saw, that made me look at sports differently because of those calls not being overturned. A reporter who is now a network television lead anchor here says the first question out of her mouth is, what's going on with you and Donovan? Me, and I blame myself for this. I was unprofessional. I was. I said a stupid question under my breath. I walked away. Her producer was right there. He said, what do you say? An Eagles player, I won't name him, said that was a stupid effing question. The locker room laughs. The producer looks at me, okay, big guy, keep talking. He's embarrassed. He's red. The next day, AC gets an email saying that I'm no longer allowed in the locker room because of the use of profanity. I didn't cuss. I didn't cuss at all. The player did, and many of his teammates did as well. They clowned the producer.
Right.
You know, this is a huge issue with black sports writers because we're not in the locker room so much that when we do walk in, the players wonder how we got in.
It's crazy.
Okay. And I'm very vocal. I'm very aggressive in the locker room. I try to ask the first question. Donovan would ask me to sit in the front row and say something about his suit as I'm walking into the pressers to loosen him up because he was going to be asked 30 of the same question. And the 30th question was what would air on local television here, and it ultimately hit ESPN because he was annoyed at so many of the same questions. So when I'm an historian, I want history to be right. I wish I was back there with Wendell Smith, you know, Jackie Robinson and them, Wendell Smith covering him, you know, so we can talk about baseball as being a pre-1947 jalopy because it's not looked at the same as Rudy.
Right.
Okay, so it's really it's a hard thing to bear, man. When you're hoping to get a story for time and to pass along to the next generation, and these athletes just shun you. One athlete cussed me out because Slam had written about him, you know, having this issues with marijuana, and he cussed me out in front of everybody, and I didn't say anything to him, you know, and I you know, I had a talk with the editor at the time of Slam, and I'm like, yo, why, man? You know, why would y'all go there? You know, so it wasn't. I'm not gonna totally blame Slam there. I'm not. But it's just a perception, man. It's a shame. You know, sometimes we walk into the locker room, we're suited up, dressed nicely, with our briefcases, and we're asked, why, where's your credential? You know, and you see white cats walk in, sweaters, holy jeans, dirty shoes, sneakers, and they just walk right by. And they're talked about, they're able to get as much time with the athlete as anyone. This is the reason why I sing LeBron James and Kobe Bryant's praises whenever I get for what they gave me and Anthony Gilbert inside the locker room, when they would shut down the locker room, as I talked to earlier, and speak to us, because they knew it was very important to speak to us. And that snotty-nosed kid in the hood that's eating jelly sandwiches, syrup sandwiches, mayonnaise sandwiches, who is talented enough to one day get to the NBA, but has a struggle. I was very glad to have covered the battle for I-95 during the lockout when it came here to the Palestra, because when I looked into the crowd, I saw black kids getting this chance to see NBA players because their parents could not afford NBA games. Those barnstorming games were very important to the various cities that he went to, because a new fan was able to follow and finally see his favorite athlete. I would hope that things are starting to change because of social media in terms of how sports is reported on. But the fact that it's not, and I had to go through what I had to go through for those years, some of these dudes is cut off from me. I don't care how good they were. I want to write the positive stories about good men, good women. You know, we're about to talk about Tamika Catchings, good woman. Her father was great. You know, some of these guys, they can kiss my ass straight up. All right, I'm done.
You muted, AC.
So let's hold there and then come back for segment 3. So I'll see you guys in a second. All right, we back. So Also going into the Hall of Fame in this class is University of Tennessee Lady Vol alum Tamika Catchings. Tamika Catchings, who spent over a decade in the WNBA and balled out, mostly for the Indiana Fever, but balled out in both college and the WNBA and overseas. And so now she's going in. Anybody want to speak on Catch?
Yeah. If over the course of me watching sports, you see a bunch of second generation athletes. Now we're getting to the age where you're starting to see third generations, right?
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about
specifically for me, because this is UCLA lineage, so I want to speak about this. You have Marcus Johnson, obviously UCLA great, Milwaukee Buck, great, Hall of Famer. You have Marcus Johnson, and you have Kristan Johnson, who didn't play domestically in the pros, but had a great, UCLA career. And now his son plays for Oregon and has a shot.
Will.
The league.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, Marcus. Both Marcus and I had Marcus and Chris on my show. I was trying to do a Father's Day show. I had him and Marcus, and I had Joe Henderson and his son.
Okay.
On. But getting back to the catchings,
Harvey.
Tamika played just like her dad. It was just like her dad as a woman, the hard nose. When you're playing basketball and it seems like you're making every play and you're getting to the hole and you bumping off the defenders and it's going off the glass and the ball's just finding the bucket. She did that so many times. And her and her sister Tarja didn't work out as well as Tamika, But me being obviously here in Philly and watching Harvey Catchings play, and the toughness, him and Derek Smith, those tough players, made it happen. No excuse. Buck Williams was like that, and so many other players. But I appreciated Tamika because she was so tough on the floor. She did it with a smile. She loved the game. She truly loved the game. Obviously because she played for Pat. And, what Pat Summitt passed down to her and augmented her basketball talent, I almost wish that the fans of basketball watched her as much as they watch any man play, because there's a lot that you can learn from such a soulful, heart-giving, passionate player on the floor that makes watching the game so much fun.
Yeah.
It gives you something deeper than just the game itself, because there is a love for the game that is so evident. And it's every time they get on the floor, whether it's practice, whether it's outside playing their kids. Can you imagine Harvey teaching his daughters how to play, and give them that sense of true, almost a soldier-like feel for the game, that they continue on and they're able to become pro players themselves. I love Tamika Catchings. I truly love. I think that she's one of the most underrated athletes that we've ever seen. And it was almost a surprise when I saw that she was getting into the Hall of Fame. But I'm so glad that she is.
So just building on what you said, when you say, can you imagine, Harvey teaching his daughters Well, another iteration of that we saw recently.
You're on mute.
You hear me? All right. So going back to what you said about Harvey teaching his daughters and Tamika becoming a great overall player and doing great things in college and then making it to the pros and then getting into the Hall of Fame. We were seeing another iteration of that, I believe, in Kobe and Gianna. And, you know, obviously she's in Gianna, rest in peace, Kobe, rest in peace, middle school. So we don't know how good she might have been. But if we look at the Harvey Catchings, Tamika Catchings compliment, then boy, we can dream, right? Because you talk about Tamika Catchings, who was just phenomenal. And, you know, you talk about the things that she could do on the court offensively and defensively, but one of these things that is so understated, especially with today's athlete, is work ethic. And boy, with that player, Tamika Catchings, go hard for every single minute of the game.
Yes.
No matter what, she's gonna give you her all at both ends of the floor, and just take a break on timeouts. Now, if you have the means to sub her out, then you sub her out. But she's not asking to come out, and she's just going to go hard, unselfish, but. So, you know, she played the back to Shamiqua, you know, when they played together in Tennessee, but then she had her moments. Like, she knew when she needed to step up, and then when Shamiqua left, and then Tamika was still there with Samika. You know, Tamika was the leader of that squad, you know, when she was still there with Samika Randall. Just someone who, for most of her time for the first half of her career, was always the best player on the floor, to learning how to play with, or knowing how to play with complementary players, and then learning how to play with players that were better than her, still always working hard and making the players around her better. Boy, is this deserving. She deserves this, and I believe that you're right, Mizzo, about her being extremely underrated. But I'm happy as a fan of basketball, who also happens to be a fan of women's basketball. I'm glad that she's got her due here. And one thing that I'm gonna go back to really quickly, something related, is Trey and I had the opportunity, or actually we didn't have the opportunity, it was our gym. They had the opportunity. We were at Sports Club LA in 1996. Well, actually it was Trey's gym, but we were at Sports Club LA 96 in late winter. It might have been early summer, but I mean late spring, early summer. And we got a chance to play with the 1996 women's Olympic team, the basketball team. And boy, was that fun. Like, we played right there in Sports Club LA. Teresa Edwards, Katrina McClain, Nikki McCray. You know, the greatest point guard of all time, Dawn Staley, was there. What's up, Coach? Yeah, it was.
What's up, Coach?
It was an amazing time, and you know, Katie Smith was there. Boy, was that fun! Like, just being involved in that, and I remember writing a piece about my experience with that. But go ahead, Trey.
No, I'm saying, and boy, were they good.
Yeah, absolutely goes without saying. Yes, absolutely.
They were good, man. But no, what I was just gonna go back with Tamika Catchings, like we're talking about how great she was and how deserving of this honor, that, you know, how she deserved it. And we're back talking about Kobe, how she left everything on the court, so did he. And that's the kind of mentality you're supposed to have to get into the Hall of Fame. Yeah. That's what the Hall of Fame is about. It's not how popular
exactly.
Great point. that. It's
Yeah.
work ethic and the love you gave back to the game.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that's just a little gem I was adding on it, you know.
Yeah. And the impact.
She definitely killed her peers.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just, and the impact that you have or had on the game.
Yep.
Yeah, she definitely left her mark, considering she was playing in Indiana, which is not a market where everyone got a chance to see her night in and night out. She definitely made sure that she left her mark when she got to the next city. I hated to see her kind of retire kind of quickly, but I understood why, because some people just have things bigger than basketball. But I definitely miss seeing her play, because she definitely could have played much longer if she chose to at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad she's in there. Kim Mulkey is deserving to go, be in a championship as a player and as a coach. Not everybody can say that. Some of the others, Eddie Sutton, I know he piled up a lot of wins at Kentucky, but I can't remember. Did he actually win a ring?
No, he was getting. He lost a lot of first round games, man. He had some.
And
I can't remember his issues too. He had some issues too at the end.
And I was gonna bring up the question: is there anybody on the list that you feel like shouldn't be on the list, and is there anybody that you feel got snubbed that should be there and is not?
I think that he's deserving because of the longevity and the wins. I'm not gonna take away from the lack of championships, because I think like guys like Big House Gaines are
Right.
kind of stained because of where they play. I mean, where they coach or whatever. Anyway, it's a little bit of different sense than Eddie Sutton, obviously, because he was at Winston-Salem State. But the one thing, like Tamika Catchings, those type of players that play so hard, I call them soul models. Because they give the game to the future because of moments of strength and just being dynamic on the floor and in every aspect. Those flurries that cause baskets to be scored and the momentum swings strictly because they were on the floor. Kim Mulkey was that type of player. I did not, I'm a big women's college ball fan as well. I don't know if you guys saw the women in Troy, but Cheryl Miller, to me, cannot even be argued as the greatest women's basketball player ever, in my opinion. To beat this team, because if you remember back then was Louisiana Tech and Texas, that were the obstacles for USC at the time,
Right.
and I just remember that player and Kim Mulkey, she was memorable in her opposition against USC. It was something to see her, bulldog her way to victories and to put her team in a position to win. And she does the same thing as a coach. I'm glad to see those type of players get to a true level of success that she has, not only as a player and as a coach. There were certain players that you want to show to your kids. And there were others, even as great as they are, that you wouldn't even mention them to your kids.
Right.
Kim Mulkey and Tamika Catchings are those. And it is great to see them go into the hall. It's a true honor and deserved honor for them to get into the Hall of Fame because They are the type of figures that advance the game. And they would never say that about themselves, right? But we know as fans and writers and whoever else that those players are the reasons why you want to watch them. You know, Dawn Staley, come on, man. I mean, goodness, I'm here. I'm in this town, you know, where she made her name for herself. When you see a hometown hero get to global success, you know, it makes you proud because you saw them. You know, for her to finally get a job, you know, at South Carolina and then lose to the great teams and then finally get over the hump. And it's a shame that because of, you know, this era that we're in, COVID-19, that she did not get a chance to finish this year out, because I know that they would have been a Final Four team and probably would have won it all.
Yeah, there's a high probability that they would have won the championship.
Oh yeah,
they were the favorite.
South Carolina basketball, even though UCLA would have been a 3 seed on the women's side too. I got Dawn Staley. By the way, she was named Coach of the Year. So once again,
yes.
Congrats, Coach.
You know what was fun? Oh, I'm sorry.
It's okay. I know you got cabin fever. This is probably reminding you of the arc now that I think about it, but you haven't hit 40 days yet. What were you saying?
You know what? I've been thinking about this. Like, at the beginning of the season, when I saw South Carolina play, and then I looked at the roster, who was, you know, junior, senior, sophomore, freshman, and the players who already have South Carolina on the top of their list, I started to think, as great as I can't say that they've made Connecticut out to be, because Connecticut has actually won games and won championships. I mean, honestly, I was always kind of biased because I was always pushing for Tennessee. But I can't deny that UConn has been the standard for the past 10 years. And as great as they've been, Dawn Staley has a chance to eclipse that.
Yes.
At her age and with the players that she's turning out, who's actually doing well in the WNBA, not just getting there, but actually performing.
Yeah.
And the players that she's bringing in on a year-to-year basis. I mean, like this year, I didn't see anybody beating South Carolina at all. Not when it counted. You know, I'm not saying that they wouldn't have anybody can have a conference stumble where you on a given night because you got them out flat and whatever. But in the bigger games that I watched them when they had a national television game this season, it wasn't close. I mean, like, they were sometimes kind of playing half speed and deciding, well, let's kick it up a notch. And, like, you know, just putting people away. I'm talking ranked in the top 10. Teams that were, you know, legitimate threats.
Yeah.
Not even an issue anymore. I mean, she's creating a machine that the legendary coaches create. And I hope that she continues to get that opportunity.
Yep.
And those players, because we know, just based on history, we don't get black coaches like this in any sport. And she's gonna be the standard in next 5 to 10 years.
And that takes me back to just you talk about a tenacious ball player. You talk about someone who always elevated those around her, unselfish, the mentality that she's going to do everything that she can to will her team to victory. You talk about her 3 straight Final Fours at the University of Virginia as a player. You talk about her getting her shot at Temple as a head coach and then breaking in at South Carolina, changing the culture there, outshining the normal SEC powers and coming in and winning a championship. And you talk about what she was putting together this year with 32 wins overall thus far, 26 wins in a row, 13 straight wins over ranked opponents in that 26-game win streak, only one loss on the season. But what's the narrative? And, you know, the number one overall seed going into the tournament. But you talk to these athletes who are stuck in the house who don't really watch women's basketball, and they want to tell you about, and, you know, no disrespect to Sabrina Ionescu, but
Right.
you trying to tell me that Oregon was going to win this thing. And again, we can argue it up and down, but why do we have to stretch to that? Why can't we celebrate what's actually happening? But I want to say this, Mike. Thank you for that info on Kim Mulkey, because I know Kim played, and I've seen some clips of her, but I didn't know all of that. And I imagine that a lot of our listeners didn't know, and viewers didn't know all that you shared about Kim Mulkey and her tenacity as a player. And then, you know, we do know about her as a coach, but it's that same mentality with Dawn. I keep going back to Dawn, you know, who was inducted into the Naismith Hall of Fame in 2013, but and this is before she won a national championship as a coach. So that's solely on player. She can go into the Hall of Fame again as a coach, you know, separately, not even a combo thing. Great insight on Tamika Catchings. Tamika Catchings touched us all. I want to give you this, Rodney, for Eddie Sutton. So 800 wins, and not 800 wins in 1,600 games.
Right.
He won 71% of his games. So I don't remember the exact number, but he lost around 350. So
yeah, 71%. I didn't know he piled up the wins.
Yeah,
definitely.
And I'll say this: one Final Four at Arkansas. Skipped Kentucky. He was only there for 4 seasons. Skipped Kentucky, but he got 2 more at Oklahoma State, and that's Oklahoma State is where he was the longest, 16 years. And he got 2 there. So I don't know who else was up for it, but I would say that that's a Hall of Fame resume to me.
Definitively.
Yeah. So, all right. So, kind of a parallel here. We talked about Marcus Johnson, Chris Johnson. So my flex is this is 2020, correct?
Worst year ever, yeah.
Year 2020, yeah, man. So this is the 25-year anniversary of the UCLA men's basketball 11th national championship. I'm thinking about this because the team got together on a Zoom the other day, and I was on KJ's wall.
Yeah, they did. I saw that.
Yeah. And a lot of those guys are my guys. And the sports information director, Bill Bennett, who always took care of me when I was at UCLA. Well, he was the associate because Mark Dellins was the head guy, but Bill Bennett was the SID for basketball. And he always took care of me. Just what a great run the 95 team had. So I want you guys to share how that 95 team touched you. But before we get into that, breaking news. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, UCLA, great. Well, the greatest, for sure, high school basketball player of all time, and arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. I meant to say college. High school and college, no argument. Arguably.
Will Chamberlain.
NBA is no argument for me.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying arguably because some people argue it. But this crap poll that had him lose in the semifinals to Shaquille? Come on, man, stop it. And no disrespect to Shaquille, but come on, dude. Let's not even talk about how you got manhandled by dude. Let's not even talk about it. What I want to say is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, UCLA legend, NBA legend, is donating 900 pairs of safety goggles to the UCLA health system so that the medical workers have these safety goggles. So that's happening as of today. So I just wanted to to share that. Or this is airing Wednesday, so that happened yesterday, Tuesday.
Shout out to Cat.
Yeah. But how did 95? I was there. I was in the mix. Trey was right there with me. I didn't know the two of you yet, but I know that you guys were in some way touched by that 95 team. So just share your thoughts.
Real quick on that.
Okay. Go ahead, Trey.
Mine is real quick, and this story is going to stick with me, not just because, Tony and I are big UCLA guys and whatnot, but the national championship game, I remember exactly where I was. I was in Japan, and I remember talking to my brother on the phone the whole game, and that phone bill for that one call was $785.
Oh my gosh.
I had no idea that call was going to be that much, but I sat there on the phone with him screaming. He was going play by play with me, and then when it was time for me to come back, they paid for everything there with an exception of like my phone bill and stuff like that. I remember that phone call was $185, but it was worth it.
So you were obviously out there. Is that MC Light?
You said what? No, I was teaching when I used to go over and teach my master classes and stuff. Okay. So I was out there for 2 weeks during that time, and yeah, I remember. That was probably just your food per diem. You were fine.
All right.
I remember for me, man, I was already at the point where I was like super tired of like the parent seemed like bias against West Coast teams.
Okay.
So once the tournament started, I'm like, all right, we got a legitimate team right here. Like this team could do something. And then, of course, Tyus went to my old high school. He grew up with my younger brother, Kedrick, and they played, in junior high school together and all that kind of stuff. And then his older brother, Russell, went to junior high with me, was a year behind me, and then again at Poly, a year behind me. So, we all hung out and joked around. All the basketball people, hung and kind of chilled around campus and high school and stuff like that. So when I saw him, playing, I'm like, oh, I'm telling people I'm in college. Well, I'm out of college, but I'm still on the East Coast, and I'm telling people, hey, it's my little buddy right here.
Yeah,
he's getting ready to show you guys how to get it done. They're knocking it. Yeah, he's okay, but we got this player and that player. And they were naming off, other point guards that they were saying were better from New York and from Chicago and stuff like that. So it was always this way back then East Coast, West Coast thing, going on. And then when he made the shot, couldn't shut me up until the championship game. You could not shut me up. And once they won the championship, it's like, oh, I'm one of only the few Californians over here. So everyone from LA is and even the people from the Bay, we joined together like, now what?
Yeah.
You guys say that all the hoop is on the East Coast. This is a California team with California players. We didn't come import, some like Sham God or somebody from the East Coast and steal him over and have him wreck and shop where he can go back home for, at the end of the year and you guys can brag on him. This is all us. So that made it even sweeter because we hadn't had nothing for a long time.
Yeah.
And then they came to the White House, and I'm sitting in this little sports bar, and the team walks in, and they were coming to see the president. So Tyus and, Toby Bailey and all the players actually came in there, and we sat talking to Tyus for about an hour, while we're sitting there eating and drinking and, acting a fool. And I got some pictures somewhere around here, but I don't remember where I put them. But, that made it even better. Because now, not only have I been bragging on him and the team for the past 2 months, but now I'm getting ready to put pictures in your face like, here we are. Right. So that made it even greater. And I can't remember the last time I saw Tyus. I just saw his brother at Polly's reunion last October, but I haven't seen Tyus in years. I saw him shortly after that. I know he was playing ball for a minute. He got in the NBA for a hot second, then he went overseas for some years and came back. And I know he was assistant coach at UCLA, which I thought the new staff should have brought him back for the fact that he's UCLA history.
Yeah.
I mean, if nothing else, when you recruiting, you throw in that highlight,
that 4
and you got that guy sitting in your living room.
Mm-hmm.
That's a sales pitch, but I guess they went in another direction. So,
all right, Mizzo, before you go, segment 4. Let's go out and come back in.
Okay.
All right, so we're back. Still talking about UCLA 95 and how it touched us. So, Mike, what you got?
Okay, Fab Five. Okay. Not winning the championship. The ball rimming out from as Jalen Rose shot it from the right wing from 3 against Arkansas to miss going to 3 straight Final Fours after Weber went to the pros. And we can talk about 93 all you want, but I don't want to talk about it. But, so that team, I needed to see the athleticism, the camaraderie from a college basketball team that Arkansas team also had because of their tradition-rich coach. So when UCLA came on the scene and everything that they had, there was so much talent on that team. Brothers, Chris, Jared Henderson being clutch as he was, it seemed like all the pieces fit as if they weren't even a puzzle. And the run that the team had was amazing to see. It filled my thirst for something that the Fab Five couldn't finish. Those athletic teams, I love them because they move athleticism to the future. And it's the reason why I hate charges. I want to see players fly. Toby, the dunks that he had, the hops that he had, I loved it. It was something to watch. And it's what we're going to miss this year and not seeing Obi Toppin play. There's a chunk of history that's lost right now on both sides, women and men's. We won't ever be able to see this. That UCLA team was so special to me because of the lineage. Like I was saying earlier, if I would have been born in Milwaukee, Marcus Johnson would be my favorite player. I don't know how the Sixers got past Milwaukee all those times. And they didn't until Marcus left for the Clippers, But it was great to see that team come to the fore. It was great to hear. I could still hear Dick Vitale's voice. You know, it was such a great team. And it like I said about the puzzle almost being a full sheet of paper, cardboard, something thick. It was a true team. You could tell that they loved each other. There was no dissension as far as I can see on the floor. Me being a former coach, I love to coach teams like that. They are together. They are what I call soul rock soul on a basketball floor. They intimidate you before they come into the gym. Once to the gym and you see how close these teams are, you're like, oh my, I don't know. The nervousness, the confrontation becomes anxiety. You don't want to face a team like this when they come in and laughing and joking because they're about to beat your ass. By any means necessary, even if it's by 30 or winning at the buzzer. And that team had the ability to do both. I was so proud of that team. I was so proud of number 54, number 52, you know, because they were kind of unheralded on that team, right? Compared to the rest of the squad. You know,
the big center was Zebek. Was it Zubek or something like that?
Or Zedek.
Zedek.
Yeah. Jelani, right? Jelani was on the team?
No, Jelani came the next year.
Okay, next year. That's right. But
Jelani,
you know,
interestingly enough, Jelani came the next year, and we lost that game to Santa Clara in Hawaii.
Right.
Jelani's it was like his first game out, and that was your boy Steve Nash.
Yes, Steve Nash, that game when he was hitting every damn shot, and they weren't just hitting, they would just swack up, and that's when Vitale sung his praises. I knew the kid was special after that. Yeah, no doubt. But you know that team was truly something, man, and it was a joy to see a gift of basketball shine. You know, the pageantry of it all. You know, the UCLA tradition is something that I adore because they had special, legendary athletes. I always say, let a legend be legendary, you know? And that team, again, as gifted as it was in a brother sense, you know, like when you watch high school basketball, the tournaments, each team has a personality, right? When they come in the gym, you can kind of see the swag within them based on their point guard, you know? And I think Lavin, you know, and the rest of the coaches didn't even have to coach. Was that Herrick?
It was Herrick. It was Herrick.
It was Herrick. Okay. But they didn't really – those teams, you don't have to coach, man. You know what I'm saying? They're just so gifted in the togetherness, the chemistry. And, you know, I was proud. You know, I know I'm brimming with accolades for that team right now, but I think it's all deserved. I appreciated that team despite being a lover of Michigan basketball for the rest of my life. You know, if there was a team for me to like, besides like that Roy Mercer, the Mercer squads at Kentucky and Derek Anderson and those dudes, I love those teams because they really give the game something that the game needs. And I know that those athletic squads are always criticized for whatever reason because they don't have the presence of a white player. To be honest, if we're gonna be honest here, you know, but I love those teams not because of race, it's because of the style of play, the toughness that they have, that they bring from blackness.
Yeah.
So don't misunderstand me here. I'm not talking about it in a racial aspect. I'm just talking about what those teams give to the sport that is missing when it's not there. So I truly love that team. And, you know, I almost went out and bought me a UCLA jersey after that.
Not too
I
late.
really
Not too
wanted
late.
to.
You almost bought
Wanted to,
31.
but I know my boy Webb and Jalen and the rest of those dudes, especially Juwan right now, would murder me.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this. One thing that was really interesting in the Michigan run was the fact that Michigan captivated the UCLA campus too. Not only was I pulling for Michigan, but I would go to the little eating area in Kirkhoff Hall, and we were all just like the campus stopped. We're watching the timeout game. All right, I won't talk more about it, but we're watching that game. Like there are hundreds of us in this eating area watching, and they weren't watching it pulling for Carolina. I mean, some of them were, but you know which ones were. But we were that, and that's class of '91. That's my class. That's Trey's class. I know Rod is 1891. I don't know what class you are, but that was our class.
I'm 90.
90. Okay, yeah. Rod got us by. Rod got you by 99 years, and he got Trey and I by 100. But he wears it well. But off camera, Mizzo wanted to know what it was like to. What do Trey and I feel made Toby special from the perspective of people who played against him? And so, I mean, you can go, Trey.
So Toby and his family, I've known them since Toby was 5 years old. I was playing minor basketball, and he was playing Pee-wees. I was always a little older, so we never played together. And he was very it all started with his father. I got to give praise to
John
father.
Bailey. Yeah.
John, respect this man so much. The no-nonsense father, but cool, super cool. Everybody, if you knew John, you loved John. Even all the way up to when he got to UCLA, was at every home game, standing in the same spot. That was his spot. He never sat down. Did he even sit down even one game when he was at UCLA?
No, he stood over there and stood over there. And I was
on the side, like he was there and why Moose was there. However, so back down to Pee-wees, Toby was always a little taller than everybody else. So when he played on the 8-foot courts, he would always stand out, scoring all of the points. Then he would practice with like the minors sometimes and was good with them as well. So he always had this good, he was skilled. He was skilled in a little more skilled than his age group. And then, that followed him all the way through rec league. He was scoring points a game in rec league. And then he got to playing at Cathedral Chapel, and he started getting a following there. Like people would go to his games. And then, he went on to Loyola, and that's when he played against the Stanford twins. What's their names?
Jaren and Jason Collins.
Yeah, the Collins twins. And I remember I was at a Loyola game, and this was like really made Toby like blow up. They played, and it was a big game. I can't remember if it was a championship game or not. However, they were definitely the underdogs because they were playing against the Collins twins, and those boys were big. And Toby went off.
Yes, he did.
And they won. Loyola won. And I always looked at then of course, I was super excited when he went to UCLA. I always looked at him as he was like a Lamar Odom. Very important piece to that team. Almost unguardable. You know what I mean? He was a total athlete. Anything, he was always, wherever the ball was, that's where Toby was. When you needed something big done, he was always there for that. And he just,
it was awesome kid, awesome athlete, came from an awesome family, and it was just, and his confidence was through the roof. Any kid that would, in a big game, I don't know if it was the championship game or one of the tournament games, he stole a ball and went down and could have just dunked it or laid it in. This kid takes off and does a 360 and turns the opposite way and dunks the ball at UCLA. Do you know if you miss that shot, what happens to you? He had the confidence to do it, though.
Yeah.
And that was like, he was awesome, man. And I just wish he would have gotten more of a shot in the NBA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The game was mixed when he was there, but I just wish he'd have got more of an opportunity because I think he was something special that we kind of missed out on.
So for me, Mike, definitely the root of it was John Bailey Sr. Their dad is just a really great guy. Very personable, very knowledgeable about the game, and he instilled in them that work ethic that we're talking about. It was very important for them to at least try to outwork everyone else. And so I think that the only thing that I can add at this point to what Trey said, because Trey covered most of it, is as Toby was coming up, he knew how to use his size because he was bigger than or taller than most of the other people. He knew how to use that to his advantage. And I think that comes from his dad, but it also comes from him working hard. And it comes from Moose also being better than his crop, so that Moose was always able to push Toby also. So that was I think the big thing there.
So could it be said that he was before his time? That's what I'm trying to get out of you, because his athleticism was that era type of athleticism that moved athleticism forward. You know, like you can tell when a guy dunks the ball that there's a different type of athleticism. That's what I'm trying to get out of y'all. You know, what was Toby Bailey as an athlete? Like, how would he be pictured in today's game in terms of his athleticism? Skill is different. You know, we know he's a skilled player. He wasn't just an athlete, is what I'm trying to say. But how does his athleticism translate to today's game?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think.
John Morant.
Yeah. So yes, definitely before his time, and
Yes.
I think that his game translates way better in the NBA today than it did then, obviously, and hence he didn't have that NBA career. Rodney always talked about guys that the max guys, the max contract guys, and how it's just the NBA is different now, and the requirements are different, the expectations are different, but he was a skilled player for sure. But that athleticism was something that, if you compare the crop then to the crop now, it would be something that they would definitely be looking for now more so than then.
His style of play was today's game.
Yeah.
I think his style of play was today's game, where when he got to the league, they weren't playing that basketball. You know what I mean? So he was always small because he was 6'5", 6'6", or something like that. So when you're playing that big ball, back when he was playing 6'5", 6'6", you're kind of small, unless you have a hell of a shot. But right now, you 6'5", shit, you'd be a power forward in today's game. But he was an athlete, leaper, up and down the court. Like, you would have a fun time watching him right now in today's play.
Yeah. So one other thing that team, it's not really that team, but that UCLA program brings me to, and I mean, in that program, I think I'm using the right term. So Trey is talking about the Collins twins, and you mentioned Lav earlier. Trey mentions the Collins twins against Toby, and we know that ultimately it was the Collins twin, the dinner for the Collins twins, that ultimately did Jim Herrick in. That meal that was allegedly paid for,
yeah,
which was a recruiting violation. And boy, was I mad about this guy, this Chancellor Guerrero, getting rid of him. Like you would put it like this: as great a coach as Herrick seemed to be, and as great as he was for UCLA, he was definitely great for UCLA because he did something that only John Wooden had done before him, and that's win an NCAA championship. Because Walt Hazard won an NIT championship, but they took that banner down in '95.
Wait, say that again. The banner from '95.
No. I said in '95 they took the NIT banner down. The Walt Hazard NIT.
Okay.
Banner.
Okay.
It took that out of Paulie.
Okay.
There we go, talking about banners.
2020, you never could have gotten fired for what Herrick got fired for as a first offense. It never would have happened, but it did happen. But here's the thing. By the time it happened, guess who was gone? Lorenzo Romar left to go coach the University of St. Louis. I think he was gone for a week. So he wasn't even really gone yet. But I think he was gone for a week when they fired Jim Herrick. And then at that point, when you look at the staff, you got Romar gone. You have Lavin. You have Gottfried gone because he took a job too. I forgot who the other. No, I know him. Scala? No, what's his? Jim. Saya. Saya was still there, and Lavin was there. Lavin wound up, and Lavin is my guy. Like I became friends with Coach Lav. But boy, did I want to see Lorenzo Romar. If Herrick had to be gone, I wanted to see Romar coach the squad. Even though, he ultimately got back to his alma mater, I wanted him to be there with that team because he was a recruiting beast for UCLA.
Yeah. I interviewed him in Washington, and I asked him that question about coaching at UCLA.
Yeah.
And it seemed like to me that it hurt him for me to ask that question. I was, I wasn't unfamiliar with it, but I didn't put it in the context of what happened there. Him going to St. Louis, that probably still haunts him. I'm sure it does. Some guys don't get that shot, to coach where they came from, and it was. I know that question hurt him, and I didn't realize it at the time. He didn't answer it.
Yeah.
And they've been chasing these straight-laced conservative coaches ever since they let Lavin go. You can see it coming when Herrick was fired. They were trying to find somebody who was, in that mold of how they ended up with Steve Alford. They wanted that type of look, someone that came from that coaching tree that had a little pedigree to it, who was an X's and O's guy, who incorporated discipline and was going to make sure the program was going to be clean, because they were getting a lot of flack from Baron Davis's recruiting. And I knew that they wanted to stay far away from anybody who they thought, for some reason, I don't know. I guess that's why I'm just guessing that a lot of black coaches get this stigma that they may get too close to the players or something and fold into the pressure of giving benefits. I'm not sure, but for whatever reason, it seems like when a team is, and it's just an observation for me, when a team is going in a new direction after sanctions, they normally go with a very conservative white guy. Ultra conservative.
Almost 100%. Almost 100%.
Yeah. And you know, I see it all the time. And it's almost kind of like, well, there are conservative black guys, you know. There are. I mean,
There are.
The guy who took over for Indiana, he was conservative. Mike, was it Mike Davis?
Mike Davis, yes.
He was conservative. I mean, it didn't
Fired
get him
quick.
anywhere, but right. And those ultra conservative coaches normally are too conservative and tired. I mean, Steve Alford is running the program anything like Bobby Knight was. That tells you right there.
Yeah.
You know, especially with today's players, they're not going. You can't talk to them the same. You can't do too much fussing and yelling and well, hey, if you're not doing it my way, get out of my gym type of stuff, because they are much more sensitive, and they've been pampered a lot more coming through AAU, you know, where they've been the focus of the team, and everybody has been saying, hey, you're going to be great, and you don't have to do this, and you don't have to make that pass, and you don't have to play tough defense because you do so much for us in other ways. You know, just relax. And then you come to a program where this new coach, you know, takes over and saying, hey, we're going to run this much today, and we're going to do suicides for this many minutes, and, you know, we're going to have a practice without the ball for the next week or two. And you're like, huh? I'm not used to that. I don't want to do that. Like, you know, as opposed to somebody who, like, I'm sure Coach Cal at Kentucky, I'm sure he's got his ways of doing things, you know, for his team. But you can look at the personality of the team and look at his personality on the sideline and tell he's a player's coach. He's not going to fuss at them and make them do too much and say too much to them to make them feel like, I don't think I want to be here. I think I want to transfer and get with somebody who gets me a little better than this. I mean, as far as I know, I've never heard a Kentucky player say that. And I'm sure there has to be, with all of the players he gets into that program, and some of them you can tell come from really humble beginnings where they, you know, basketball is life. They haven't been required to do anything else. It amazes me that there hasn't been any run-ins where he says, you know what, I had to dismiss this player from my team.
Yep. All right.
Because there's a hard head on every team. I don't care any team and AC, you probably can say the same thing, but male or female, there's always one person who you spot and you have to say, we got to watch him. We got to watch her.
Yeah, and then it depends on how your leadership steps up to maybe quell that before it becomes an issue with the coaching staff. And so maybe that's the leaders that they have there.
Very true.
All right, so this brings us to the part of our show that we call the closeout, where each one of us goes around and takes a minute or less to just talk about whatever we want to talk about. And then after the closeout, I'll have a poll question for everybody. So this is the closeout. Mike, a minute or less.
So, I was talking to my son today. You know, he's a gifted athlete in his own right, tore his patella tendon, and probably ruined him from playing. I thought he was a Division I basketball player and also quarterback. I was talking to him about how I don't think anything is going to go back to where we see it as normal. I don't know if they'll have people at sporting events for almost a year. What is happening, though, even in the throes of the collective being together now? Everybody, look, there isn't like the issues that we have so much in this society, you know? And I think that the individual is going to come back to the fore because our thought process is going to be different. We're not going to rely on an ESPN as much as we have before. ESPN a lot of his influence right now, you know, because we're not hearing the same narratives every day, you know.
Right.
And Trey was talking about how they're playing games of right now, you know. That's because ESPN basically goes off that Michael Jordan was the first basketball player. So, you know, I think that what happens now is people just think for yourself, you know. Don't take what you hear from Stephen A. or anybody else. Get Bayless to the water cooler every day. If the water cooler ever comes back in terms of our interaction with humans again, we don't know what's going to happen now. You know, just think for yourself and also reflect on why you became a sports fan, why you follow sports outside of what I call the noise from the network set. You know, follow the game, teach your kids the game as if you're playing it, and move it forward to the future.
Word. Trey.
I just want to take my little time to just say, hope everybody out there. First, thanks for tuning in and listening to us. We really do appreciate that. We keeping you entertained. Next thing, man, stay inside. Stay inside. They want us to stay inside, stay safe, enjoy this time with your family. If they saying don't go outside right now, don't go. It's not a good week to go outside. If you got enough food to stay in the house for the rest of this week, next 7 days, do it.
Yeah.
Save a life, save your life, save everyone around you.
Bam. Rock.
Piggybacking off of Trey, stay inside, keep your family safe. If you pray, whatever you do to get you through, we pray over here. But if you do something different that gets you through, do something to get you through these rough times. We're at some times where we've never seen it before in our generation, and domestically, because we've always heard about things that's going on in other countries and fires put out pretty fast. But when it comes to here and being all across the U.S., it's on another level. So be safe. Try to take in as much sports as you can on repeat, and hopefully someone will hear this and
in a minute or less.
And come and well, I'm just saying, come in with a question for us that maybe they've heard in our podcast that they want to ask or something like that, and we can get to it and get even thicker with the debates.
Yes,
hey,
I love
your
it.
turn. You can say goodbye.
Right. I got like 5 seconds. My closeout. Worst trade in Jerry West's tenure was Benoit Benjamin for Sam Perkins. I do not know why he made that trade. It hurt my heart. Thank you guys for tuning in, for watching us. Thank you for listening to us. We'll catch you next week. This is the Collective Podcast with AC, Trey, Mizzo, and Rod. We appreciate you. Thank you.
One love.
Peace.